Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's educational session on the taxation of travel allowances in Spain. I'm Alex, your tax consultant, and this is Sarah, our curious client. Today, we'll explore the different classes of income subject to income tax and focus on the rules and limits for travel allowances. Let's get started.
Hi, Alex. I'm eager to understand how travel allowances are taxed in Spain. Could you give us an overview of the major classes of income subject to income tax?
Of course, Sarah. In Spain, there are 5 major classes of income subject to income tax. They are income from work, income from capital, income from economic activities, capital gains and imputed income. For today's discussion, we're focusing on income from work, specifically travel allowances. These allowances are considered part of an employee's income from work and are subject to taxation, except when they adhere to specific rules and limits outlined in the law.
That's interesting. So, what are these specific rules and limits for travel allowances?
Excellent question, Sarah. The specific rules and limits can be found in Article 9 here. According to these rules, only allowances paid within the prescribed limits are tax-free. Any amount beyond these limits is considered taxable income for the employee. This arrangement benefits both the employee, as they receive compensation without taxation, and the employer, as they can deduct it as an expense and avoid higher social security contribution.
I see. But do companies have to pay the maximum limit for travel allowances?
Not necessarily, Sarah. Companies have varying financial situations, internal policies, and agreements with their employees. They are not obligated to pay up to the maximum limit defined by the law. So, there are situations where they might pay less than the maximum limit or not provide any allowances at all.
That's good to know. Are there any other important details we should be aware of?
Yes, there is an important clause in Article 9 that's not widely known. It states that when travel and living expenses are not specifically compensated by the companies, taxpayers who receive work income from labor relations may reduce their income for tax purposes.
So, when travel expenses and subsistence allowances are not compensated, they can be considered as additional deductions when calculating a taxpayer's net income from work.
Exactly, Sarah. Now let's distinguish the 3 types of allowances related to travel expenses, accommodation expenses, and subsistence allowances. Travel expenses include expenses required for the person to travel to their destination and return back. These can be compensated without triggering taxation if the person travels by public transport and has supporting documents like confirmed tickets.
But what if they travel by their own vehicle?
If they use their private vehicle, the company can compensate them for the use. Since July 2023, it's set at 26 cents per kilometer, and before that, it was 19 cents per kilometer since 2005. Additionally, road tolls and parking expenses can be fully compensated.
I see. And what about accommodation expenses and subsistence allowances?
Accommodation expenses can be compensated if the employee pays for the stay away from home for work purposes, justified by valid invoices or equivalent documents. However, if the employer doesn't compensate for these costs, the employee cannot include them as additional deductions in their income tax declaration. Subsistence allowance is also known as pernocta. There are 2 situations. If an employee goes on a business trip but returns home for the night, they can be paid a compensation of 26.67 euros per day for trips in Spain or 48.08 euros per day for trips abroad to cover extra expenses incurred.
And what about trips where they spend a night in a hotel?
In that case, accommodation expenses like the hotel stay are covered based on the supplied invoice or equivalent document. The employee can also receive a subsistence allowance of up to 53.34 euros per day for trips in Spain and 91.35 euros per day for trips outside Spain without the need for supporting documents.
Got it. Are there any time limits or special rules for specific employee categories?
Yes, there are time limits for tax-free payments of the subsistence allowance and accommodation expenses. If an employee is continuously sent to work outside their normal residence, such a period cannot exceed 9 months. There are also special rules for truck drivers and flight personnel for air companies, granting them different allowances and supporting document requirement.
I see. So, to summarize, travel allowances are considered part of an employee's income from work and are subject to taxation unless they adhere to specific rules and limits defined in the law.
That's correct, Sarah. To exclude these allowances from taxation, they need to stay within prescribed limits and conditions. There are also special rules for certain employee categories, as we discussed.
Thank you, Alex. This was really informative. Now, I'd like to see some practical examples to better understand how it works.
Of course. Let's go through a couple of examples to illustrate how travel allowances are taxed in real scenarios. Let's dive into the first example, Jack's business trip from Madrid to Valencia. The company paid him €400 for travel expenses, and he provided 2 air tickets costing €220 to the accounting department. Now, it depends on the company's policy. If Jack returns the difference of €180, there is no taxable income. But if the company allows Jack to keep the difference, then there is €180 of taxable income, which will be shown in Jack's tax declaration as income from work.
So, if Jack kept the difference, he would have to pay taxes on that amount. What if he had traveled by his own car instead?
Excellent question, Sarah. If Jack traveled by his personal car, the distance between Madrid and Valencia is 300 kilometers one way. For the round trip, that's 300 kilometers times 2 is equal to 600 kilometers. The tax-free allowance for each kilometer is 26 cents. So, Jack's tax-free allowance for the trip would be 600 kilometers times €0.26 equals €156. Any amount beyond that, which is €220 minus €156 equals €64, will be treated as Jack's additional taxable income from work.
I understand now. So, if Jack traveled by his personal car, he would have €64 of taxable income.
That's correct, Sarah. Now, let's move on to challenge 1. This is for you to figure out. Mary made 6 trips from Madrid to Barcelona, and the company paid her €1,500. The distance between Madrid and Barcelona is 600 kilometers one way. Assume each return air ticket cost her €200. Will there be any additional taxable income for Mary? Pause the video and try to find the answer yourself.
So, Mary received €1,500 in total for the 6 trips. If each air ticket cost her €200, the total expenses would be €200 times 6 is equal to €1,200. So, the difference would be €1,500 minus €1,200 equals €300.
Great work, Sarah. You got it. The difference of €300 will be treated as additional income from work for Mary.
Thank you. It makes sense now. What if Mary used her private car instead of the plane for travel?
Another great question. If Mary used her personal car for the trips, the distance between Madrid and Barcelona is 600 kilometers one way. For the round trip, that's 600 kilometers times 2 is equal to 1,200 kilometers. The tax-free allowance for each kilometer is still €0.26. So, Mary's tax-free allowance for the 6 trips would be 1,200 kilometers times €0.26 times 6 is equal to €1,872. Since the difference of €372, €1,872 minus €1,500 is not compensated by the company, Mary can deduct it from her net income when filing her tax declaration.
Got it. So, if Mary used her personal car, she won't have any additional taxable income.
Exactly. You nailed it, Sarah. Now, let's move on to example 2. Jack is sent by his company from Madrid to Barcelona for a 4-day business trip. The company bought air tickets costing €200 with a company card. Additionally, Jack received €400 from the company to cover his extra daily costs during the business trip, as the company has an internal policy to pay employees a €100 daily allowance for business trips in Spain. However, after returning, Jack does not have any supporting documents for his expenses while traveling to Barcelona.
So, Jack received €400 for his daily allowance. Will there be any additional taxable income for him?
Let's break it down, Sarah. Firstly, there is no additional income related to the cost of air tickets, as they were charged directly to the company. Now, let's consider the daily allowance. To be tax-free, the daily allowance for traveling in Spain is limited to €53.34 per day. As Jack was away for 4 days, his tax-free allowance for the trip would be €53.34 times 4 is equal to €213.36. Since he received €400, that means €186.64 will be taxable and considered as extra income from employment.
Thank you for the explanation, Alex. That makes sense.
I hope these examples helped you understand the taxation of travel allowances better. Remember, following the specific rules and limits can make a significant difference in an employee's taxable income. To summarize, travel allowances are considered part of an employee's income from work and are subject to usual taxation rules unless they adhere to the specific rules and limits as outlined in the law. We've seen how various scenarios can affect the taxable income and deductions.
Absolutely. It's essential for both employees and employers to be aware of these rules to optimize their tax situation and expenses.
That's right. Being knowledgeable about tax regulations can help individuals and companies make informed decisions and manage their finances effectively.
Thank you, Alex, for this informative session. I've learned a lot about Spanish income tax and travel allowances.
You're welcome, Sarah. It was my pleasure to share this knowledge with you. If you have any more questions in the future, feel free to reach out.
I definitely will. Thanks again, and I look forward to our next meeting.
The pleasure is mine, Sarah. Have a great day, and see you next time.
Thank you for watching our educational video on the taxation of travel allowances in Spain. If you found this information useful, please like and subscribe to our channel for more informative content. Have a wonderful day, and until next time.